Let's imagine something for a second. Picture this. It's March 2026. India, the world's fifth largest economy, is practically grinding to a halt. In cities, in villages, you see these massive queues snaking around gas distribution centers. Restaurants are literally switching back to firewood. The engine of a rising superpower is just sputtering. And it's not because of some domestic failure, no. It's all because of a war happening thousands of miles away. So yeah, let's dive into this fictional but very, very possible future. 4,000 rupees. Just let that sink in. That's the black market price for a single cooking gas cylinder. For millions upon millions of Indian households, this isn't just some inconvenience. It is a full-blown crisis. It's hitting everything from family budgets to just the basic ability to cook a meal. The money families have to spend on cooking fuel has just skyrocketed. And here's why. A staggering 90% of India's LPG imports, we're talking about the gas that fuels tens of millions of homes, it all has to travel through one single, narrow, and incredibly volatile waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. So when conflict erupts between the US and Iran, this critical choke point basically closes down. And just like that, India's energy lifeline is severed. So, you have to ask the question, right? How on earth did a conflict so far away manage to paralyze a nation of over 1.4 billion people? Well, to really get a handle on the crisis of 2026, we've got to go back. We need to unpack the really complex relationships at play here. This isn't some news story that just popped up overnight. The tension between the United States and Iran, that's a rivalry that's been simmering for decades. And India, well, India has been carefully, very carefully, walking a tightrope between them this entire time. Let's just quickly run through the history because it's important. The big break really happens back in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. The new regime starts calling the US the Great Satan. That hostility just gets deeper through the 90s with trade embargoes. And then, of course, in 2002, President Bush famously lumps Iran into the axis of evil. We did see a brief thaw, a little bit of hope in 2015 with the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA. But that all fell apart in 2018 when the US pulled out and slammed those crippling sanctions right back on. It's just this consistent pattern of deep, deep mistrust and confrontation. And this slide right here gets to the absolute heart of India's problem. On one hand, you have Iran. For India, that relationship is all about energy security, regional connections through the super important Chabahar port, and of course, these deep historical links. But on the other hand, you have the US. That's a vital strategic partnership. We're talking massive trade and deepening ties in defense and technology. Here's the bottom line. India cannot afford to tick off either one of them. It needs both to keep its own growth story going. Okay, so let's get back to our 2026 crisis. The Strait of Hormuz is closed, the economy is under massive pressure. So how does India respond? Well, it draws on decades of careful, calculated diplomacy. This quote, it absolutely nails the Indian playbook. While other countries might be out there issuing loud statements or picking sides, India goes quiet. Publicly, it stays neutral, just urging everyone to calm down. But behind the scenes, its diplomatic machine is working overtime. And this is just a brilliant illustration of what that quiet diplomacy can achieve. The Indian Navy launches Operation Senkalp to escort its ships, but it's not done in some aggressive confrontational way. Instead, the safe passage for each and every vessel is negotiated directly with Iran, one by one. So why does Iran even listen? Well, it's because of the goodwill that India has built up over the years. Iran remembers India's investment in Chabahar port. And maybe most importantly, it remembers that India kept buying its oil when others walked away during past sanctions. See? That long-term strategy is paying off right now. But look, even with these diplomatic wins, getting a few ships through the strait doesn't solve the bigger problem. It's like a band-aid on a massive wound. A prolonged conflict presents just immense dangers to the Indian economy. In fact, India's own central bank governor laid out 5 critical ways this whole thing could hurt. First, high oil prices mean imported inflation. Costs go up for everyone. Second, you've got supply chain shocks that hit every single sector. Third, all the market uncertainty freezes up investment and spending. People get scared. Fourth, a weak global economy means nobody's buying India's exports. And finally, you get these financial spillovers from volatile global markets that make it more expensive for everyone in India to borrow money. It's just a cascade of economic pain. This analyst, Kapil Reddy, he puts it so starkly. He says that by trying to stay out of the fight, India risks becoming its biggest collateral damage. Think about that.
too small to really influence the big players making war, but way too exposed to be spared from the fallout. I mean, that is just a devastating way to look at the limits of being neutral.
And all of this leaves us with one final big nagging question. India, for years, has mastered this art of strategic autonomy, right? Of balancing all these competing powers. But in a world that is increasingly demanding that you pick a side, especially when a crisis threatens your most basic economic needs, is that balancing act even possible anymore? Can any nation really walk that tightrope forever?